The Russians had been boycotting the Security Council because of its refusal to cede Communist China. The Russians had been boycotting the Security Council because of its refusal to cede Communist China. They failed to return.
And to this day, I still don't understand it. And resent. And consider it a stupid error on our part. We should not have allowed the Security Council, which was wholly pro the USA, to pass a resolution to send troops to Korea under the blue flag of the United Nations.
Instead
of the Alger-Hiss Defense Fund, the notorious Soviet spy. I know that Hiss denied the charges, but now the recently released FBI's Venona tapes have shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was in fact a Soviet agent. You know what he was doing back in the 1920s? Joseph Stalin, this is before we even recognized the Bolshevik regime. Joseph Stalin picked a young New York attorney to represent Bolshevik interests in America. He picked Dean Acheson. After World War II, the communist regime, the new communist regime in Poland was having trouble getting U.S. recognition. Whose law firm did they recruit to get U.S. recognition? The law firm that every communist knew he could trust, the law firm of Dean Acheson. Acheson's law partner was Donald Hiss, the brother of the Soviet spy.
Acheson recast his Asia policy in late 1949. Policy on China seemed to be clear.
The United States of America is not going to quibble about the integrity of its position. As the President has stated, we are not going to use our forces in connection with the present situation in Formosa. We are not going to attempt to seize the island. We are not going to get involved militarily in any way on the island of Formosa.
But policy on Korea was not settled. In January 1950, Acheson outlined a two-tier strategic approach at the press club.
Dean Acheson's press club speech was very important, not so much for what it exactly said, but how it was interpreted. Well, he described our defense perimeter in the Pacific, and he left Korea out of that perimeter. He did add that for areas beyond this line, resort must be had to the United Nations, and the experience has been that that is not a weak reed upon which to lean. But nevertheless, his speech was widely interpreted as writing off Korea.
This Acheson speech was exactly like Hitler's contention that he wanted peace. It was all deception, and the leadership in North Korea was fully aware of this. The South Korean army couldn't mobilize without the permission of the USA, and was entirely dependent on them for ammunition and fuel.
North Korea was now well supplied with Soviet T-34 tanks. It had a well-trained army, augmented by 60,000 veterans who had fought in the Chinese Civil War. By 1950, the Northern Army was larger, though both could call an equivalent manpower. The North had tanks and fighter planes, but the Southern Army and police had greatly expanded with US advisors and Korean officers from the old Japanese Army. Preparations intensified on both sides of the 38th parallel. News of the fighting reached Washington on a Saturday evening. Truman and Acheson were out of town. Most top officials seemed unaware of the dangers.
I myself, who was Assistant Secretary for Far Eastern Affairs, was having dinner with the columnist Joseph Alsop, and at that same dinner was Secretary of the Army Frank Pace. And no one had called us to say the North Koreans are about to attack. That was the evening in which we decided that the first thing we should do is to take this matter to the United Nations. And so we alerted our people at our delegation at the United Nations to call for a special meeting of the UN Security Council the next day.
The Russians had been boycotting the Security Council because of its refusal to cede Communist China. They failed to return.
I was amazed that the Russians, when they realized what the Security Council was about to do, did not suddenly appear and do something about it. Because if it were true that the Russians were well aware of what was about to happen, it's most unlikely that they would have stayed away from the Security Council that afternoon. I think the Russians were a bit surprised by what happened and didn't get themselves organized in time.
До сих пор. And to this day, I still don't understand it.
Понять.
And resent.
И очень недоволен.
And consider it a stupid error on our part.
Считаю, что это
We should not have allowed the Security Council,
с нашей стороны,
which was wholly pro the USA,
Совету
to
Безопасности
pass a resolution to send troops to Korea
США
under
принять
the blue flag of the
резолюцию
United Nations.
о том, чтобы послать в Корею войска под голубым флагом ООН.
At midnight yesterday, I was informed that the conflict appeared to have broken out in Korea.